Hello. Oh, I think I Hello and welcome to the Yoga of Eating. Thank you so much for joining. It's my pleasure to have you on this call. My name is Sarah Klein. I know that there's lots of you that I know on this call, and there's also some emails that I didn't recognize. So thanks so much for joining. And it's really fun to get a chat going. And actually, Karen from Real Energy Foods, who I run, who's also a integrative nutritionist health coach, will be on in the chat as well. So it's awesome to get a conversation going. So feel free to ask your questions. Karen will be on for the first half of the call, answering those, and I can answer any of them when I come back. And there is going to be a live Q&A, so take notes and save your questions because I'd love to answer them live after the call. And with that, and with the beauty of the internet, it's cool to see where everybody is calling from. So go ahead in the chat and share where you're calling from. I'd love to hear. I am calling from Durango, Colorado. So we're going to get this started. I am going to share my screen. We have lots of great material, and I'll see you on the other side. Okay, so the yoga of eating, surely one of my favorite presentations to give, where I get to combine my two favorite things, yoga and food. So I want to start off by asking, and again, please share in the chat, how many of you practice yoga regularly? Now, I'm going to refer to the yoga practice often, but I want to start off by saying that, asana, which means posture, and the way that we would picture yoga in the Western world, isn't the only way that you can practice yoga. So practicing yoga for you could be something like running or playing music or biking. Essentially, it is any action that we do where we're using our body, and we're using our body as the vessel into the present moment, right? So when we put our body into asana or into postures, sensations arise. And we have the opportunity to focus on those sensations, and that draws us into the present moment, right? What is more present than focusing on your breath? Or what is more present than focusing on the sensations of stretching your hip? Right? And from the present moment, some yogis will say that's where life can be lived. Or from the present moment is where we can slip into the practice of meditation, the practice of focus, and drawing inward. So with that, when I say or refer to the yoga practice, you might think of something else that brings about that experience for you. Okay, so the mission of this presentation is to create a bridge between modern nutrition theories and ancient yoga philosophy. And with that, hopefully we can prove that you are what you eat. And to further that, not just what you eat, but how you eat. So we are what we eat truly on a cellular level, right? We ingest our food, it transports into our blood. Our blood becomes our skin, hair, and nails. We are what we eat. What we eat affects our mood, it affects our behaviors, it affects everything that we do. It's our fuel. So we're going to talk more about that, but take it hopefully a little bit deeper and talk about how. So for those of you who know me, I'm Sarah Klein. I'm an avid yogi and owner of Whole Health Lab and an integrative nutritionist. So my passion for food goes way back. And one of the many reasons I decided to study nutrition was my interest in understanding why we do what we do when we know what we know. So I've studied health psychology. And, none of us are alone in this cycle. The self-sabotage that tends to happen around food, it almost feels like a rite of passage in our country, right? The yo-yo dieting, the guilt that gets intertwined with our meals, the ups and the downs of pounds and emotions, right? We've all observed this behavior in ourselves and in others. And don't get me wrong, I've absolutely had my own struggles. And being an athlete, I was always able to hide it away. However, you can never truly hide it away. And the way that mine was expressed was through migraines. And it really took me into my mid 20s and a lot of research to figure out how to rid myself of them. Whole foods, real clean foods, hydration, movement, and meditation. And the path of yoga has really led me into a new experience of health for sure. So again, avid yogi, I'm completely addicted to the practice. I have absolutely drinking the Kool-Aid, and I serve it up to anyone who is willing to try it. So the practice of yoga teaches us to connect, to observe, and to study our inner experiences. So as I started to study nutrition and being a food lover, quickly that process began to bleed into my kitchen, into my dinner table, and into the grocery store. And this connection between yoga and eating is at the heart of my work. And with that, let's dive into all the great material we have tonight. Okay, so there's going to be a couple food for thought moments within the presentation, and I encourage you to honestly ask yourself these questions. So have you ever noticed that when you are being diligent about getting on your yoga mat, your eating habits are affected or impacted, or vice versa, right? When you're not exercising too much, your eating habits may change. Or when you're really focusing on food, maybe you're more motivated to go to the gym. So this is all intertwined on a deep level, on a subconscious level, that it's important to start to bring some awareness to. And when we bring awareness, it can be a bit motivating. So our problem, right? The question humans have been answering since the beginning of our time of what to eat has us stumped. And for good reason. You know, this picture totally grasps it. When you're walking down the grocery store aisles, you are bombarded by marketing, and everybody is telling you what to eat and why. You go into the bookstore and there's hundreds of different dietary theories, each one contradicting the other. So what should we be eating? Now, we like to call this in modern nutritional theories bio-individuality. And it's the idea that what works for one person doesn't necessarily work for the other. Now, think about it. Do you know somebody who can thrive on something like dairy or gluten or meat, and that doesn't work for you, or vice versa? And that's why there's so many nutritional theories out there, because they're coming from an honest place most of the times. They found something that worked for them. And nutrition is a new science, surprisingly enough. So as we start to integrate our yoga practice to our dinner table, right, this process of listening, observing, and noticing can help us to navigate these systems. It can help us to answer the questions of what should I be eating? What's the best thing to eat for me? So a little research study that I always like to bring up and in the beginning of this presentation. The number one predictor of longevity is your personal perception of health. So this proves that our subconscious has dramatic effect on our reality of health. So we're going to talk more about yoga theory, and we're going to talk about kind of that chitter chatter of the mind. What we're telling ourselves about our health, what we're believing, we are perceiving, and therefore seeing. So it's really important to get clear on how you feel about your health. So here's an interesting research study done by, excuse me, I caught a little cold and I sound like a frog. Excuse my voice. So this is a really interesting research study. They compared the attitudes of food and pleasure between French and American individuals. And you can see they asked 3 questions. So the first one is, I eat low-fat foods a few times a week. Now you can see in the US that is those numbers are dramatically different. Now, why would somebody eat low-fat foods? Probably because they consciously think that they're doing something for their health. Now, this could be a whole webinar in itself, but fat has been demonized for years, and fat is our friend. Our brain is 70% fat. We need fat to actually burn fat, to have high quality energy. But for the purpose of this presentation, this proves that Americans are making a conscious decision to eat low-fat foods because we believe it's healthy. Now, number 2, enjoying food is one of the greatest pleasures of my life. As you can see, there's a bit of a difference here. And then number 3, I see myself as healthy. 75% of the French, or 74% say yes, and 34 say yes. So almost 75% say no in the United States. So as you can see, that if the number one predictor of our longevity, of our health, is the way we see it, well, we have a bit of disconnect. And further to prove that, we have a bit of disconnect with the idea that we're eating low-fat food, so we think we're doing something good for our health. So we've got some work to do, right? There's some clarity to be had. Okay, so take a moment and ask yourself, what is food to you? So I'm a firm believer that food is pleasure, it's community, right? We eat it with the people that we love most. It's social, it's cultural, right? When you're traveling, it's always so interesting to try new foods. So with that, prana, if you're new to yoga, prana means life force. It means life energy. And when we're practicing yoga, we're in a sense farming the prana. We're cultivating the prana. We're kind of emphasizing that life force energy. We're increasing it and expanding it and grounding it as well. So with that, hopefully we can make the argument through this presentation that food is all of these great things of community, but it's also prana. All right, so we are going to set the tone with yoga theory. And we're going to just skim the surface of yoga theory, right? And if you're new to yoga, I encourage you to pick up some interesting yoga theory books and start to dive in. And the beauty of yoga theory is I like to believe or trust that you're hearing what you need to hear at that moment. So some of my favorite teachers, I'll go to one of their classes and they'll say something that will just blow right over my head. I'll go back a couple months later and it will smack me with understanding, right? So it's this idea of every time you open it up, every time you hear somebody talk about it, you're going to grab something different. And that's okay. So take what you get, take what resonates, and I strongly encourage you to keep studying the yoga theory. Okay, so here's some yoga cues that you may hear when you're in a yoga class. Something like, focus on how the posture feels versus how it looks, or start to observe the cause and effect of a posture. So can we take all that we learn on the yoga mat and bring it between the fork and the spoon, right? Can we further that and bring this awareness that we cultivate on the yoga mat to the grocery store while we're cooking and while we're eating? So in Sanskrit, they have a term named samskara, and it means conditioned habit. And one of the purposes of yoga is to rid ourselves of conditioned habit. So step out of conditioned habit and move into conscious choices. So I'm sure we can all think of many actions that we do in a day that are just conditioned, right? We don't even think before we do them. Brush our teeth, take a shower, cook, eat, and not even really notice what you're doing. A great time to think about it is if you're on the phone multitasking. Have you ever talked on the phone while ate a meal? You're going to absolutely eat way more and feel less satisfied after it. So this idea of observing and listening, what would change for you if you brought that to the dinner table? So when we start to bring our attention to these things, conscious behavior and action create awareness. And then we're able to pull ourselves into our power. And I truly believe that how you eat is as important as what you eat. All right, the Yoga Sutra. So if these are new to you, this is a whole book and it basically explains what and how to do yoga. And it also tells us that yoga is far deeper than any of those postures. And it really only has a few sutras that connect on the postures that we maybe picture yoga as. So yoga is no religion, but I always like to explain this just to kind of give it a reference. If it were, the Yoga Sutras would be like the Bible or the Quran or something like that. Now, the first 3 or 4 sutras are said to explain the whole book, or the whole book explains these first couple sutras. So a keen student may be able to get it all in just these first sutras. Now, every time I read these or I read a new translation of them, I get something new. So again, take what comes up and resonates. So the first one is now the exploration of yoga is being made. And I like to think about this in 2 ways. So now, as in all that you have done in preparation has brought to you to this moment to start to study this practice of yoga. Right? You signed up for this webinar for a reason. Something brought you here now. And then another way to kind of think about this one is now is in every moment. So now at the grocery store is a time to practice yoga. Or now at the dinner table is a time to practice yoga. Or now in the conversation that I'm having with a friend is a time to practice yoga. It's much deeper than our yoga mat. So this second one is kind of the end all be all of the sutras. And it's basically saying that the purpose of yoga is to control or quiet or turn down the mind stuff. Well, what is the mind stuff? The mind stuff is the chitter chatter, the constant commentary that is always occurring between our temples, right? It's the shoulda, coulda, woulda. I thought, you thought. It's that story that we're always telling ourselves, positive, negative, good, bad, that in a sense creates an illusion, right? It's not truth, right? We like to attach truth to that chitter chatter. We like to believe it, but in a sense, it's really just made up in our head. And all of humanity shares this hurdle, let's call it. So the purpose of yoga is quieting down the mind. Then number 3 says, if we are able to do that, then the self is able to abide in his own true nature. Then this they call is self-realization, right? Then we can step into our power. We can detach from the illusion of the chitter chatter and step forward into truth. And the fourth one, which I didn't write down, basically says that if we don't do that, right, if we don't quiet the mind, then we believe that the mind stuff is truth. So if this just went over your head, don't worry, you're probably not alone. Feel free to ask questions in the chat and keep those questions for after for the live Q&A. And if this stuff is interesting to you, I encourage you to dive deeper, get yourself a Yoga Sutra translation, and start peeling away at it. So I love this quote from Ramdana, to identify oneself with the body and yet seek happiness is like attempting to cross a river on the back of an alligator. In truth, you are spirit. So it's this idea that yoga says this all the time, we are not the body, we are not the mind, we are not the emotions. Okay, well, if I'm not those things, what am I? Good question to ask. So if we put ourselves into these small categories of mind, body, and emotion, we're limiting ourselves. We're taking an edge off our greatness. And so yoga is kind of separating that and allowing us to tap into that power, if you will. So when we start to identify with that inner chitter chatter, that inner commentary, we make decisions from that place. However, if we create space and turn down the chitter chatter, then we're able to make decisions from our rudder or our true north or whatever you want to say, but from a conscious, clear space. All right, let's see if we can loop that all into food. And that would bring up mindful eating. So, finding ourselves in a place where we are in that chitter chatter, right? Like, here's a great example. So, say you have a really stressful day and you come home to prepare dinner, and you're so in your head about all the worries and concerns that happen during the day. Do you think that you're going to eat slowly? Do you think you're going to eat the right amount? Do you think that you'll make a healthy choice of what to cook? I mean, the question's for you. So, the more that we can bring awareness, or yoga is essentially asking us to bring awareness to our lives, and that creates conscious choice. All right, so we're going to talk about digestion. We're just going to graze over the top and correlate it into mindful eating. So we are rushed, right? We live in a distracted and very busy world. I always like to comment how we have the whole world at our fingertips in our pockets every moment, our iPhones. So we rarely take time to truly savor our foods. And this is so important for our health. And I'm going to give you a couple of reasons why. And the first one is digestion. So the process of digestion actually begins when we smell the food. So when we smell good cooking, our saliva starts to activate. And in our saliva, there's loads of digestive enzymes. And then when we sit down for our meal, what are we supposed to do? Well, let's say it like this. When we sit down and start eating, what are we supposed to do? Chew, right? And many times we'll be distracted or in our heads or focused on something else that we'll start shoveling the food down. Now, that is putting a lot of pressure on the rest of our digestive system, our GI tract. The process of the food meeting the saliva is the beginning of the digestive system. So that saliva is starting to break down the food. Then, of course, the chewing, the teeth help that process. And the more that we can break down the food in the beginning of our digestive system, the less later down the road it has to work. And the less it has to work, the more fluidly it flows, as well as the more we can absorb nutrients. So there's a lot of research on this, and it's vast and it's proven. But when we're putting large amounts of food into our belly and we're eating unconsciously, then we're much more likely to eat more quicker, so consuming more. And then the food that's landing in our digestive tract is ending up making us feel sick because of how our digestive system has to deal with it. We absorb less nutrients and our digestive health suffers. So a couple other aspects that why mindful eating is so great. So when we are eating, the signal that we are full takes time to get to our brain. So by the time it gets to our brain, if we're eating quickly and unmindfully, we could have already finished an extra half of a plate. So by slowing down, we will automatically eat less, no doubt about it. And then overeating can also impact our relationship to our food. So when we overeat, we create a story around that process of overeating, right? We contribute to that chitter chatter by feelings of guilt, shame, or regret. So when we slow down, we can separate that and start to create a healthy relationship with our food. Satisfaction can be absolutely impacted by overeating. When you're unconsciously eating, you're going to eat more because you're not focusing on the process of eating, so you won't feel as full or satisfied. All right, let's talk about cravings. So take a moment and ask yourself, what is your inner dialogue when you have a craving? I think that, this is something I work with a lot of clients, is this idea of when we have a craving, we think it is a lack of willpower or we think it's a problem. And I'm going to encourage you to kind of flip that viewpoint here. So, yoga teaches us to quiet the mind and take the seat as the witness. Now, so a craving is essentially not a weakness, but an important message that our body is telling us. So our body is constantly giving us feedback. It is highly intelligent. It is always whispering these important messages to us. And cravings are important messages. It's your body telling you what you need. So starting to get in the habit of deconstructing those cravings and truly opening your inner ear for what you really need can be a deal breaker for combating these cravings and curbing the cravings. So we're going to quickly run through these aspects of why we may be having cravings and just for some food for thought. So the first one is a lot of times when we think we're hungry, we're really just dehydrated. So I encourage you, if you find that you have sugar cravings or salt cravings or whatever you may face, take a moment, drink a big glass of water, wait 10 minutes, and then see if you're still hungry. The communication system between our stomach and our brain isn't always super accurate, so it can just be dehydration. The second one is primary food. So this theory of primary food is secondary food is everything that we eat. So all the food that goes down the hatch, all the drinks. Primary food is the stuff that really fuels us in life. So it's things like relationships, career, social life, education, etc. It's the things that really give life zest. So a lot of times when we have a craving, it could be for a lack of inspiration at work or in a relationship or something along those lines. So kind of giving yourself a moment to stop, notice, and ask yourself, what am I really hungry for here? Again, playing with that observing and listening. The next one is contracting foods and expanding foods. So contracting foods would be like salt, animal foods, foods rich in protein, foods that give us feelings of strength and increase our mental and physical power. So when we're overeating one, and then let me finish, expanding foods would be things like sugar and coffee, greens can be expanding. So when we're overeating one, we might be craving the opposite to look for balance. So our body is constantly looking to create equilibrium. It's constantly looking to find balance. So sometimes when we're craving sugar, we actually just need protein. I find that one. So becoming aware of maybe what's lacking in your diet. The next one's grandma's calling. This is the one that our heritage or what we were fed as a child really does impact what we need in certain moments. You know, have a bad day at work, and you're probably going to want to go home and eat quote unquote comfort food. And that comfort food might be associated with what you ate as a kid. So I always encourage clients to satisfy that craving, but find a healthier choice. So a good example would be if pasta is your grandma calling, then maybe try spaghetti squash or zucchini noodles or something along those lines. Seasonal, I think we can all identify with that. We crave different things according to the season. So just noticing, honoring, and meeting it. Lack of nutrients. So this is a big one in the sense that if we're eating a lot of processed foods, we're probably not getting the adequate amount of nutrients. So our body is going to keep craving food, and if we keep feeding it not lively food filled with nutrients and vitamins and minerals, then we're still going to be hungry. So hormonal, absolutely. I think we can all of us women can definitely connect with that one. So the idea is to slow down and ask yourself really what you are hungry for. What does the craving mean? And start to deconstruct it and change your relationship to it, right? Don't demonize the craving. Instead, listen to it as an important message from your body. We're going to breeze over food energetics. I think it's kind of an interesting topic to bring up, especially when we're talking about the yoga of eating. So it's this new emerging science, and basically it's saying that different types of food hold different types of energy. If we eat lots of processed foods. They might not have as high quality of energy as if we're eating farm fresh veggies with lots of vitamins and nutrients and minerals and micronutrients. But to further that, they're also starting to show that what the plants or what our food does in the environment, it also does in our body. So it's pretty interesting stuff. So greens. What do greens do in nature? Where they reach towards the sun and they soak up chlorophyll. And they basically turn the sun into energy for the plant. And in a sense, they're breathing for the plant. So what do greens do in our body? Well, chlorophyll is the closest in structure to human blood. What does blood do? Well, it transports oxygen to our cells. So greens are full of antioxidants, which help our body to use oxygen more effectively. And then think about it, like after you have a big salad, maybe with some healthy protein, a little healthy fat, how do you feel? Do you feel heavy or light? Food for thought. Next is root vegetables. So obviously root vegetables grow in the soil. They assimilate the soil and turn it into food for the plant. Root vegetables are also high in antioxidants. And what do antioxidants do? Well, they bind to free radicals in the body. They bind to toxins and they allow the body to excrete the toxins. Root vegetables are also high in beta carotene. That's considered the quote unquote cleaning the blood. It helps to decrease blood pressure. So, and then I encourage you, don't just believe what I say here. Try it out for yourself. If you're having a really stressful week, try to stack in root veggies and notice if they impact your feelings of groundedness, right? I find it pretty amazing when I eat lots of root veggies during a stressful time. It helps me to kind of relax and calm down. And then I didn't put this one in the slides, but things like pumpkin, squash, zucchini, and cucumbers, all that grow right above the soil, right on the ground, however, they're shown to balance mood and energy. So they they're full of B complex vitamins, zinc and magnesium, and those are all shown for benefiting our blood sugar. And when our blood sugars are stabilized, helps to benefit our mood. So you can see how that's kind of all intertwined and connected. It's really interesting stuff. And the whole idea is that if we start to kind of tune into this, we can eat according to the energy we are looking for, right? Have a big presentation, maybe eat some powerful food, want to feel light and at ease, eat some light foods. So it's an interesting thing to play with and see how it works for your body. Now, next is processed foods. Now, let's bring back the idea of prana. And if foods hold different levels of prana, what kind of prana do you think processed foods hold? Well, essentially, in order to create these foods that you see on the screen, they've made many, many chemicals and taken some forms of food and processed it and processed it and processed it multiple times. And each time the food is processed, basically we're taking the energy of the food out of it. And then when we digest this food and we ask our digestive system to figure out what to do with it, it has to work so hard because it's actually looked at as like a foreign body. And the body says, I don't know what this chemical is. And so it has to use more energy to digest it. So in a sense, when we're talking about eating for energy, well, if we're eating processed food, we're kind of depleting our energy by eating it because our body has to work so hard to digest it. And that's the whole idea of eat, and still be hungry, right? Eat processed foods and your body still needs the nutrients and vitamins to function. So, what would change for you if you truly saw food as fuel? And then start to think about what level of prana does your food hold? We can agree that different foods hold different qualities of energy. And when we eat that food, we take that energy in, right? Food is fuel. So can you eat for energy? If we eat high quality fuel, will we have high quality energy? All right, so here's some food for thought. If you were to eat the Big Mac, how would you feel energetically after that? Right? Notice, observe. Think about the yoga cues that you hear in the yoga mat. Can you apply it? Or if you were to eat a salad full of healthy fat and healthy protein, okay, so when we're talking about food energetics, I think it is important to just briefly touch on the idea of organic versus conventional. I'm not going to go too far down this. I address it in some of the other presentations or some of the other webinars. But here's two pictures to kind of consider. On your left, you're looking at the organic farm. Now, if greens are supposed to reach towards the sun, pull chlorophyll in to pull in energy for the plant so that we can digest that, and then it can do that for our blood. Do you think the picture on the right, the greens are really pulling in energy there? If the guy has to wear a mask. So that's your conventional unorganic greens on the right. And then I always like to apologize if this is the first time you've seen these types of images. I'm sorry that I'm the one that has to show it. But right, if food is energy, could the argument out there be that if we are eating animals, are we taking in their energies? So the picture on the left is your cage-free eggs, because they're not in cages, although they are all on top of each other. The far right is your most expensive egg, the pasteurized egg, the ones who are able to live freely as they do in nature. And then the ones in the middle are your not cage-free eggs. Those are your cheapest eggs that you'd find in the grocery store. So those chickens don't spread their wings. They don't move. They're all stacked on top of one another. Do you think that they have high quality energy? You know, it's food for thought. It's this process of starting to step into awareness, right? Yoga asks us to be aware of the decisions we're making, and just consciously make them. Okay, so with that, I got to give my planet pitch. So another food for thought. We as humans truly are only as healthy as our planet is. Now, the Food and Agriculture Organization of the UN stated that the meat industry must be reduced by 50% to save the planet. Why is that? Well, the global livestock industry produces more greenhouse gas emissions than all cars, planes, trains, and ships combined. Now, again, if that's the first time you've heard that, I apologize that it's coming from me, but that's a pretty eye-opening statistic. And I am not by any means doing a vegetarian pitch here. I do not believe that everybody should be a vegetarian. It comes back to bio-individuality. Some people thrive on a vegan diet. Some people thrive on a vegetarian diet. Some people don't, right? So it's not saying what to do or what not to do, and it's not all or nothing. And really what I kind of do suggest is the moderation and just being aware. You know, do we need to be eating meat at every single meal? You know, do we need the bacon with our eggs plus the Reuben with turkey and bacon on top of it plus the chicken breast wrapped in bacon for dinner? You know, if you're talking from your health, absolutely not. That's not good for your health, and it's definitely not good for the planet. So it's just bringing light onto the situation so we can make conscious decisions. Okay, so let's talk about how to eat mindfully, right? We know it's good for us. And how do we bring our yoga practice to the dinner table? So take a moment and check in. So, sorry, let me back up. When we start a yoga practice, we always take a moment to check in, right? We take a couple breaths, we set our intention, we take a couple moments of silence. Maybe we om, right? So we do that so that we can step forward with conscious behavior. And we do yoga for our health. Now, maybe the aspects of the physical health, like flexibility and strength, are what initially brought you to the yoga practice. However, and I've talked to many people, and I truly believe this for myself, it's the mental clarity, the increased of energy, that feeling of inner peace that really keep us coming back to the yoga mat. So we trick ourselves by the physical aspects, but it's the mental and emotional aspects that keep us there. Now, right, if we start to view food as fuel, then showing up at the dinner table is just like an act of showing up at the yoga class. So, what would change for you if you started to set intention, if you started to take a couple breaths before you ate? Would that impact your behavior? And then with that, that also helps to impact our relationship to our food. It impacts that mind stuff around food. Sometimes when I'm giving this presentation live, I like to do a guided meditation around food. I'm going to skip over it, but I totally encourage you, you can find it online for sure, to try a food meditation at some point. It's really, really interesting. And when I start to work with clients about bringing mindfulness into their eating, one of the biggest things that starts to come up is this practice of gratitude, where we take time to appreciate the food that's on our plate. We start to recognize how far the food has come to our plate and therefore nourish our bodies, right? We recognize the farmer who planted the seed, the person who watered the seed, packaged it, delivered it, put it on the shelf, the money that we spent to buy it, and starting to just notice and bring aware how much goes into our food and why it's there, right? It's there to nourish us. And then another thing about eating mindful, decrease distractions. Try not to look at Facebook or get on the internet while you're eating. Really give yourself that time so that you can truly digest your food on a deep level. And then, of course, listen to the feedback. All right. So with that, I want to take a moment and introduce my next program. Karen, who's been on the chat, Karen and I's next program, Whole Clean Living. And the idea of clean living or clean eating, it's kind of a spoof off of the idea of clean eating, is that it's not a diet, it's a lifestyle. And the three pillars that we most believe in is whole, clean, real foods, reflection or meditation, taking time to work with the inner dialogue, taking time to create clarity and purity within your mind, and then movement. So those are the three main pillars in the work that we do. So our next program starts on Monday. We're super excited about it. Monday, the 29th, and it's a 6-week online group health coaching program. And if you'd like to learn more, the link is right there, wholecleanliving.com. And then what is included in this program? You might have seen we just did a challenge for the month of January. And the way that these two programs really differ is the 6-week group coaching program has a significant amount more of one-on-one attention. So you get personalized support and accountability to meet your health goals. There's loads of educational materials, there's live calls, there's guided meditations. We connect you with the other participants so you have a like-minded community and accountability. And we've seen participants get great results. And so here's Tina, who joined one of our group programs, and here's what she had to say. Her biggest thing was she loved all the recipes. And in this next program, you get full 6-week meal plans with full recipes. And Karen and I both like to really eat well, so don't worry, they're all delicious. There's no deprivation on these programs. It's all about adding in versus taking out. And here's Priscilla. She comes to my yoga classes regularly, and I love how, I'm sure she's on the call, and I love how she always gives me a live testimonial in my yoga class. So here's what she had to say. We loved having her in the program. And then here's, some food for thought if this program is right for you. And if you really are thinking about diving into this program, I would be psyched to jump on a call or exchange a couple emails with you to see if this program is right for you. People have had some great success, and we love the content and material of it. So we would love to have you in the program. And then I just want to thank you if you've made it this long through the webinar. And a way I like to think is to share Life Equals. I'm an ambassador for their company. They're kind of like Tom's, the shoe brand. If you buy one pack of vitamins, they ship a pack to kids in the third world. And I personally use these vitamins. They're super high quality, and they're made in the United States. They're all whole foods product based. They're really, really high quality. And because I'm an ambassador, and why I'm an ambassador is so I can get discounts for my clients. So if you use the code WholeHealthLab30, you'll get 30% off of your order. Or if you want to do a subscription, you can use the code WholeHealthLab75. You'll get 75% off of your first order. And then with the subscription, you'll get 15% off of your following orders with free shipping. And again, I highly recommend these guys. So again, I'm wholehealthlab.com. I do group and individual programs. Please reach out if you have more questions. We're going to switch over to the live Q&A. And I'm going to do that now. Okay, hello. Looks like there was a good chat going on. I'll give you guys a few minutes and see if anyone has any live questions. I'd love to answer them live. And you can actually raise your hand, which would be really cool to see your face. I totally understand if you don't want to do that. To be honest, I don't totally love doing it either. So yeah, raise your hand if you want to ask the question live, or just share it in the chat. And then again, my website's wholehealthlab.com. Karen posted up the link for our 6-week program, which we have some spots left, and we'd love to answer questions that you have on that. Just reach out. And if I don't get any questions in a couple minutes, I am going to conclude the webinar. All right, everyone. I want to thank you again. Thank you so much for joining. It's been my pleasure. And oh, we got one from Samantha. Random yoga question. Hold on. The blood rushes. Okay, so Samantha is asking a downward dog question. All the blood rushes to her head and is very uncomfortable. Now, I guess I would, this would be kind of a back and forth type of question. But I would check in with things like your iron level, your hydration. Are you doing hot yoga? What type of yoga are you doing? Is it when you're doing forward folds? It could be an imbalance. Now, blood rushing to our head is a good thing, right? Where blood is full of prana, it's full of energy, and it's healing. So when it's rushing to our head, that's why we flip upside down, right? All day gravity pulls one way on us, so it's good to flip it around. So with that, that might be a question that would be good to exchange through email. So it's wholehealthlab@gmail.com. I'd be happy to kind of dissect that. I would like to hear more about kind of the yoga practice that you're doing. All right. So I appreciate you all so much for being on this call. It looks like, Abby, you thought it was at 9 p.m. It was 9 p.m. Eastern time. So the recording will be emailed to you. Sorry if we just caught you. All right, everyone, have a wonderful night. Please reach out with your questions. at gmail.com. Sorry, I'm trying to organize the chat. It's wholehealthlab at gmail.com. I'll write that in the chat. All right. Have a lovely evening. And if you're going to eat, I hope you eat mindfully. Namaste.